Fatiha. Selamun Aleyküm. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Salatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin seyyidil evvelin ve ahirin. Madad ya Resulullah, madad ya Sadat ashabi Resulullah, madad ya meşayih destura ve aşamna fazla seyyid Muhammed al Hakkani. Madad tarikatuna as-suhba vel hayr fil cemiyye. Bazen insana zenginlik iyi olur.
Sometimes being rich can be good and a blessing for a human.
Bazen kötü olur.
Sometimes being rich can be bad.
Bazı insanlar parası çok olunca
There are some people who may have a lot of money,
kendini bir şey zanneder.
but them having a lot of money leads to them thinking of themselves to be something.
Başkalarını beğenmez, üstler kibir eder.
They then despise others, they become arrogant and look down onto others,
Hakkı kabul etmez.
and they do not accept the truth.
Kendi kafasına göre bir şeyler yapmaya
They act based on their own discretion and based on their own thinking,
uğraşır. Ne için bunu yapıyor?
and then they struggle and try to accomplish something based on their own thoughts.
Bu insana nefsini Firavun gibi
And why is this? Because the ego of a human being is like Pharaoh,
tanrılık iddiası
and as Pharaoh, the ego will claim to be God,
vardır nefiste.
and the ego has the characteristic to claim and think of itself to be God, just as Pharaoh did.
Ona göre biraz kuvvet para için her zaman para kuvvettir.
And thus the ego is led astray by money, wealth, which represents power, and once the ego has power,
Altın kuvvettir.
gold is power.
Onun için bu şaşkın insanlar onu bulunca
And once confused people, obtain the power of wealth,
kendilerini bir şey zanneder.
they think of themselves to be something.
Bu eskiden beri ta
And this has always been the case in the past too.
yeni bir şey değil.
This is not something new.
Allah Azze ve Celle insanı böyle yaratmış.
This is the way how we humans have been created by Allah Almighty.
Nefis de yaratmış, şeytan da yaratmış.
Allah Almighty created us with the ego, and Allah Almighty created the shaitan.
Ona tabi olanlar
Those who follow shaitan and the ego,
bir şey bulunca kendilerine tanrılık iddiasını
think of themselves and claim to be God once they obtain some kind of power.
yaparlar kendilerini. Bu şimdiki zamanda da aynı şekildedir.
And this is how things used to be in the past, and this is also how things are today.
Şimdiki zamanda da aynı şekilde. Şimdi daha beter biraz.
Today, people have even become worse.
Hem şey var, para, kuvvet var.
Because besides the power of wealth, the power of money,
Bir de dünyaya hükmedeceğiz diye biraz da Allah Azze ve Celle bilgi vermiş.
they also have now the power of knowledge, through which then they claim to control and rule over the entire world. And this knowledge is a divine gift and a divine favor by Allah Almighty.
O bilgiyi bir şey zannediyorlar ki
But and they think that this knowledge is so immense,
zerre bile değil Allah Azze ve Celle'nin azametinin karşısında
But compared to Allah Almighty's greatness, that knowledge which they are so proud of is not even a tiny spot or a tiny atom compared to Allah Almighty's greatness.
Zerre mukarene etmemiz bize hatadır.
And it's even a mistake to make such a comparison.
Biz Firavun dedi, ben sizin en büyük tanrınızım.
Pharaoh said, I'm your greatest God.
En yüksek tanrınızım diye.
I'm your highest God.
Diye şey yaptı Firavun. Firavun her zaman var.
And Pharaoh always existed.
Zamanda da aynı şekilde.
Pharaohs existed in the past and pharaohs exist today.
Devam ediyor. Ama Allah'ın hikmeti, onlar sevilmeyen insanlar.
And based on Allah Almighty's wisdom, pharaohs are people who are not loved by others.
Çünkü Allah'ın düşmanıdır.
Because they are the enemies of Allah.
Allah'ın düşmanı olan millet ona buğz eder.
And those who are the enemies of Allah are people who are also not loved by people in general.
Yani menfaat için yanında olsa bile kalplerinde zerre kadar muhabbet yok o insanlara.
So people may accompany such pharaohs who are in power today in order to benefit from them, in order to gain some profit by being with them, but in their hearts they never like such people.
O insanlar bir kaç gün bu dünyada yaşar.
We live in this world for just a few days,
Sonra o da Firavun gibi geçip gider.
yet those people claim to be like Pharaoh,
Onun için bu
and they will end like Pharaoh.
mala, mülke kanmak akıl işi değil.
So it isn't as people with understanding and with a mind, you should never be led astray or distracted by power or wealth.
Allah yolunda veren insan parası olup
You should be steadfast on Allah Almighty's way, and if you have been blessed with wealth, then you should also spend it for the sake of Allah Almighty.
o da sevilen insandır.
And those who are generous and spend what Allah Almighty has given to them are people who are loved by others.
Çünkü Allah cömertleri sever.
Allah Almighty loves those who are generous.
Azze ve Celle verdi mi başkalarına da versin de sen verenleri sever.
Allah Almighty loves those who share with others and spend by saying, it is Him, Allah Almighty, who has given this favor to us, and we just distribute what Allah Almighty has given to us.
Onlarda bu iddialar olmaz onlarda.
And people who think this way and who are aware of their wealth being a favor of Allah Almighty never claim things for themselves and don't claim to be something.
Çünkü kalplerinde biliyorlar mülk sahibi, mal sahibi Allah Azze ve Celle'dir.
Because in their hearts they know that it is Him, Almighty Allah, who is the only possessor of everything and the only owner of everything.
Bir vesile yapıp da hizmet için bize vermişse
And they know that they are just the means who have been put to service by Allah Almighty by having been given from His wealth.
bu büyük bir şanstır, büyük bir mutluluktur.
And they realize that their wealth is an opportunity and it's a means and a chance for them in order to share what Allah Almighty has given to them.
Onun için bu dünya uzun bir şey değil.
This life is not long.
Dünyada bütün dünya senin olsa yine bırakıp gideceksin.
Even if you possess the entire world, in the end you will leave this world behind and abandon everything.
Onun için akıllı olan insan bu Allah'ın emrettiği ikram ettiği şeyleri onu Allah yolunda versin.
Therefore, a person with the reason and the mind should be aware that, and is aware that, what he has been given is a favor and a divine and divine gift by Allah Almighty, and will spend for Allah Almighty's sake what he has been given.
Allah yolunda olsun.
And and they are aware that what is given to them is for the sake and is meant to be for the sake of Allah Almighty.
Allah hepimize nasip etsin. Bu ikramları Allah'ın yolunda harcamaları.
May Allah Almighty bless us by being those who share and distribute what Allah Almighty share and distribute the means that Allah Almighty has given to them, and spend them for the sake of Allah Almighty.
Allah Azze ve Celle'nin sevdiği insanlar oluruz.
And then thereby we will become people who are loved by Allah Almighty.
Allah razı olsun. Ve minallah tevfik. El Fatiha.